Senior Assistant เป็น Senior Assistant Director from Education and Community Outreach National Heritage Board Singapore นะคะคุณอัสมาจะมาเล่าให้ฟังถึงโปรเจกต์ที่คุณอัสมากำลังทำอยู่กับชุมชนแล้วก็เป็น Outreach Program หรือว่าเป็นโปรแกรมที่ทำอยู่กับโรงเรียนแล้วก็สถานศึกษานะคะระหว่างพิพิธภัณฑ์กับสถานศึกษาแล้วก็เป็นโปรเจกต์นี้ชื่อว่า Singapore's Little Treasure Project นะคะ This morning session our guest speaker is Miss Asmah Alias, the Senior Assistant Director from Education and Community Outreach National Heritage Board Singapore. She will talk about the project that she has involved with. The title of her talk today is Singapore's Little Treasure Project. Please welcome Mr. Asmah.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Asmah. I'm from the National Heritage Board Singapore. Before I start off, I would just like to thank the organizer for inviting me today and for taking good care of me when I'm here. It's been a good few days so far. Thank you so much. I think just now the MC mentioned that the title of my presentation is actually Singapore's Little Treasure. That was the initial presentation title, but I realized that I have about 60 minutes to talk. So if I were to just talk about that project, it will just take me about 10 or 15 minutes. So I have decided to actually share about some of the other projects that we do at the National Heritage Board in Singapore. These are namely our education and our outreach projects, right? So before I start, I thought I would give you a bit of introduction about the National Heritage Board in Singapore. What are we? Okay, I am not particularly representing any museum today, but the board is actually a statutory board, or we are a government agency under the Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth, or MCCY for short. So the National Heritage Board was actually established in 1993. So as you can see, our mission is actually to instill some pride and passion in Singaporeans about the heritage or the history of our country. So that is because of that, we are organizing quite a number of engagement as well as outreach activities. So our mission is actually to preserve and to celebrate our shared heritage, and that is done through the various roles of the museum. The board, like I mentioned, actually managed quite a few national museums. Of course, the main one being the National Museum of Singapore. We also actually have other museums which is under the charge of the National Heritage Board, like the Asian Civilization Museum that focuses on the Southeast Asian history and collection. We also have the Peranakan Museum, which of course talks about the history and the culture of the Peranakan people in Singapore. We have the Philatelic Museum, it's not here. And other than the national museums, we also actually manage a few heritage institutions. These are smaller heritage centers that caters to the different ethnic groups in Singapore. So for example, last year, we just opened the Indian Heritage Center. We also have the Malay Heritage Center, and we have the Sun Yat-sen Nanyang Memorial Hall. That one talks a bit about the Chinese culture and history in Singapore. The roles of NHB, so like I shared with you earlier, so other than museum management, we are also involved in preservation and conservation. We do have a big conservation center at Jurong Port Road in Singapore, so that is where all our national collections are being stored, being restored, being conserved before they actually come out on display in the museums. Other than that, we also do a lot of research. Exhibition, of course, is our main core. And then of late, because there's a lot of interest and the public in Singapore is getting more vocal as well, so we do a lot of community engagement work. And one of it, of course, is through education, which I'll be sharing shortly. So I am from the Education and Community Outreach Division. So there are about 3 or 4 of us in the division. We are based in the headquarters in NHB. We work very closely with our colleagues at the museum. So at the museum itself, we also have museum educators, but I think we share the same problem. I mean, I had conversations with some of you and some of our colleagues, counterparts yesterday. Generally, in the museum, we only have 1 or 2 person in charge of education. So that's where my division comes in. So my colleagues at the museum museum will actually be welcoming the students when they come to the museum. Normally there's only one or two of them, and whenever there's more than one, they are also actually tasked to do public programming other than just education programs. So my team will then work with them. So we actually work with the education partners like the Ministry of Education, with the Early Childhood Development Agency, and of course with other partners in education to help to bring these students to the museum. And then once they're at the museum, my colleagues at the museum will take over. So we have 3 education strategies actually. So one of it is actually to promote the use of our museums as authentic learning resources. So through this strategy, what we do is we actually try to weave in and we try to put some content, try to put some artifacts and national collection in the textbooks. So we have been lucky so far in the primary school. So the primary school in Singapore is about 7 to 12 years old. Some of our collection, national collection, are in the social studies textbook. And in the secondary school, which is your high school, right, 13 years and above, they are in the history textbook. So that's one way. The one that I'll be sharing more on will be the signature programs, outreach programs. So these are the programs that goes beyond the curriculum, beyond school time, and outside of museums. And then the other thing that we do, of course, is to actually build capabilities in order to ensure sustainability. So how do we do this? Is actually to train the students as guides, which I will share later. And the other thing that we do a lot of is also to train the teachers and educators on how to use our museums and how to use our resources to enhance the teaching and delivery of the lessons. Right, so in the next few slides, I will be sharing with you the programs, starting from the preschool all the way up to tertiary. So I will just pick like 1 or 2 programs for each level. So for the preschool, so you heard about the Singapore's Little Treasure. So there's the Singapore's Little Treasure is actually a project for our preschool students. This is something that we piloted in 2014. It's actually a new program. We have not, in the past, we have not really been active, or we've not really done a lot of work with the preschoolers. But we realized that in order for them to appreciate culture and heritage, I think we have to start them young. So we start by having this program called Singapore's Little Treasure. It's targeted at preschool. So in preschool, I mean as early as 5, 6 years old. Right, so these are the news clippings actually that we garnered when we first launched the program in 2014. So what we did, right, for the preschool project, this one was not done by us alone. It was actually in collaboration with the Early Childhood Development Agency in Singapore. Again, this is a new agency. Actually, so they are similar to like the Ministry of Education. So like for the primary school and above, it will be under the Ministry of Education. So in Singapore, the preschool comes under this government agency called the Early Childhood Development Agency, or ECDA in short. So what we do is when we started the pilot program, we only started with 10 schools. So we work with ECDA to reach out to these schools, to these preschool teachers to promote the program. What does this program entail? There'll be a short video later that will show you more about the program, but I will just briefly share with you. So if you see from the yeah, so if you can see at the top, right, there is that luggage or that traveling trunk. So that is the thing that is actually given to the preschool teachers. Inside will be those things that you see below. So we have like the old telephone, we have the tiffin carrier. Can anybody guess what's here? Anyone knows what's that? Any guesses? No? Pillow, that's right. So that's a wooden pillow, right? So again, it's not all of us know, right? So it's a wooden pillow, or sometimes there's a ceramic pillow as well that's being used in the past. So these are things from our national collection. So we pick a few items, like 3 to 4 items from our national museum. We replicate this, of course, and then we put it in those luggage that you see at the top. And then before that, after we have done a call out with the preschool, so when we started, there was about 10 preschool. What we did was we started with a teacher's training. So the teacher's training took about 2.5 days. During the teacher's training, we teach them strategies on how to go about using this item, using these collections, and developing lesson plans. So we work together with them to come up with lesson plans around this item. So that is not so intimidating, because we do realize that some some of the teachers, the preschool teachers themselves, they may not have been to the museum, or if they have been to the museum, they're probably not confident of bringing their young ones to the museum because, museum is supposed to be very quiet. They cannot touch this and touch that. So this is how we overcome that. So in school, when the teachers teach them, they take out all these collections so you can touch, you can see, you can feel, you can tell them what it feels, what it's being used for. So eventually then after the teachers training, after they conduct a few lessons with the preschoolers in school, then they bring the kids to the museum. So by then the kids are not so, again, intimidated. They have seen these items, they know what is it for, they don't find it boring because they know what is it about. So these are the kids at the museum. At the museum itself also, we have the traveling trunk again, which we call something like a pop-up kit. So when they come to the museum, usually we would have a facilitator as well to work together with the teachers, especially if the teachers are still not very confident of bringing the kids around the gallery. So of course, ideally, we would just lend or loan the bag to the teacher at the museum. They don't have to bring the entire thing, right? Then they can take out some of these items again. They can go to a corner and they can show their kids what are some of these things, and then again reference it to the display that they see in the museum. So some of the teachers try to be creative as well. So they come up with these things like a viewfinder, because you cannot touch, right, the items in the museum, but you can close look. So they use like all those ice cream sticks actually to make like a viewfinder. So they give this to the kids. When kids go to the museum, again, they want to touch. So we give them something like that. So their hands are not so free for them to touch things. So they just hold on to their viewfinder. They can go close to the object, right? And then have a look at it. You don't touch. You just see with your eyes, right? We actually even come up with a jingle. Unfortunately, I don't have it here, with a jingle and like a museum song that we teach the kids, and we let the kids listen to before they come to the museum. So it rings in their mind, okay, so you must walk like a mouse, and then you don't touch, you only see with your eyes, things like that. So these are some of the feedback that we received from the teachers, as well as from our partner, which is the CEO of ACDA. So they find that it really encourages, exploration of the rich diversity and cultural heritage. And of course, the teachers find that it helps them to learn more about the museums. And then, of course, there is something by the student himself. He said that he learns more about the past, and that it's actually quite fun. History is not boring after all. Okay. I will let you watch this video about the project itself. Yeah, it's just a short, about 3 minutes video.
So we were quite surprised how supportive the parents were, and there was one parent who even feedback that this was a good chance for her to talk to her child about certain things that she thought she would never discuss with the child. So all these things actually encouraged the staff in my school to do even better. So we hope to continue this next year.
Thank you. Right, so as you can see from the video, there is also some parental involvement, and in some cases, even the grandparents were very excited and they get involved because some of the teachers were really very passionate about it. The program actually runs for about 9 months, but of course we encourage them to continue for at least 2 years. But some of the schools were very excited, so what they did was they even after that set up a small heritage corner within the preschool itself. And when they do that, they actually get parents on board. So the parents and the grandparents come and donate some of the items or collection from the family, some items of the past. And then in some cases, actually they get the parents or grandparents rather to come and do storytelling with these children on what life was like in the past. How whether you really use the pillow in the past, whether you really use the tiffin carriers and all that to carry your food. So it's really real life sharing. So there is actually that multi-generation interaction and bonding with the parents and the grandparents. So I'll move on to the next project. The next project is actually for the primary school. So this was again something that we just launched this year. This is called the Heritage Explorers program. What it is, it's really a badge program. I think some of you are familiar with some of this badge program in Singapore. So what we hope actually to instill through this program is again to create an awareness among the primary school student. The target actually would be students from primary 3 and above. So primary 3 is about 9 years old. I mean, there are some schools, of course, that the teachers said that, no, actually, I think the younger ones can benefit from this as well, or they would enjoy this as well. So as with all the projects that we do, we try to start with a pilot. Similarly for this, we started with a pilot with only 2 schools last year. When we work on a pilot, what we did was we actually engaged the teachers. In this case, we also actually engaged some of the curriculum planners from the Ministry of Education to actually look through and vet through our materials to see whether the task that we want the kids to do is really doable, whether it's really something that they can do at their level. Because sometimes as an educator, we find that it's very simple. I think the kids can do this, or my kid can do this, but we have to understand that different kids have got different learning abilities. So that was something that we actually learned along the process. When we work with Ministry of Education, for example, even a simple word, for us, it's understood. I read this, I think it's simple, but they point out to us that some kids are really of lower ability. So you really have to make your task simpler. You really have to make the question simpler. So these are some of the things that we benefit when we do a pilot project, because when we work with the ministry and then they get their teachers involved as well to help us look through the task and to suggest what are some of the ideas or better ways actually to do it. So this one really is like I said, it's a badge project. So what the kids have to do, right, is they have to role play. So there are different professions within the heritage industry. But of course, when you talk about working in a museum, the first thing that comes to mind is, are you a curator? But not everyone is a curator, right? So we want to actually tell the kids that there are different professions in the heritage industry. I know they are still very young at their age. They probably are not thinking of a career or something, but the whole idea is just to expose them. So there are 5 badges that the kids can attain, and they are all representing different professions. So we have the curator, of course, and then we have the historian, we have the educator, we have a designer, and we have an ambassador. I mean, some of these tasks are, of course, relevant to other industries as well. But then some of these professions, but when we do up the tasks, we make sure they are relevant to the industry itself. So there is this booklet, the top there, that the kids would get. So again, this was done through schools. So after the pilot program with 2 schools, this year in March, we actually open up to all schools, primary schools in Singapore. If you are interested, you can come and join this program. So to date, we actually have about 40 schools that have come on board this program, and that's about 17,000 students already. I have not seen all the works yet because they are given 1 semester or about 6 months to actually work on the tasks. So basically in the booklet that you see there are 5 different tasks for each profession. What the students have to do is they have to complete 3 tasks, just 3 out of the 5 tasks, and then they get their teacher to sign, or they can, for one of the tasks, they can get their parents to sign, and then the teachers will collate everything, send back to us, and we give them the badge. Like kids of their age, they still like to collect badges, put it on their collars or bags or something like that. So they get very excited. And the tasks are simple. So at the end of the day, we want them to know that heritage is a part of everyday life. It's not just something that you see in the museum. It's all around you. It's in your neighborhood. So a simple task could be, okay, maybe go out to your neighborhood, try to learn to play a traditional game, and then after you play that game, maybe write a simple learning or instructional guide for your friend, or do a video, record it for your friend, and then teach them how to play the game. Or go to your neighbor, talk to your neighbor about the different cultures in Singapore. Really, it's about just getting them interested in culture as well, because Singapore being a multicultural society, right? In most cities we are like that. So we want to instill that awareness, that kind of appreciation of the different cultures that we have. So it's very simple. Then, of course, some of the more challenging tasks would be go to a museum. So, of course, there is a choice because you only need to do 3 out of the 5 tasks. So, if you don't want to go to the museum, it's fine. But we hope you do choose a task that eventually leads you to the museum. Or even if you don't go to a museum when you conduct this project, we hope that eventually you'll be excited enough to bring your parents or your family, hey, come, let's go to the museum. I want to learn more. So that is the intent behind most of the outreach projects that we do. I have another video again on this project, yeah.
The new program has been launched by the National Heritage Board, allowing primary school students to try their hand at being historians or curators. The program, called Heritage Explorers, has been rolled out in 20 primary schools for more than 10,000 students. Under the program, students complete tasks grouped under 5 heritage professions, including exhibit designer, educator, and heritage ambassador. To earn their Heritage Explorer badges, students have to get out of the classroom and visit museums or cultural areas like Kampong Glam. They will need to learn how to play traditional games like Zhongkak, and then create instruction sheets or videos to teach their friends or family the game.
Today we learned more about the cultural games and how they were so authentic and why they're so important, and they were really fun to play. The other tasks also seemed very interesting, and if I were to do it again, I would definitely...
So basically that was actually the news coverage that was taken during the launch of the program. So like I said, so initially we started with about 2 schools, and then after the launch, so before the launch we have about almost 20 schools that sign up. After the launch there was greater actually publicity as well, so another 20 schools have come up to sign for this program. Currently it's free for them, so the teachers will just have to let us know how many students want to participate in this project, and then once they finish, they show us some samples of the students' work. We will deliver the badges to the students. So that's for the primary school. The other thing that we are doing with the primary school, because my division also does a lot of heritage trails. So last year, especially as part of the Singapore's 50th birthday, we actually have a mega trail, or the biggest trail that we have. It's called the Jubilee Walk. Jubilee because last year was our Jubilee year. So for a trail, normally it's about 5 to 10 kilometers depending on the area. So for the Jubilee Walk, it was about 8 kilometers. So there are quite a number of sites actually. And of course, normally when we have a trail, we have a guided tour as well. But for this particular trail, because it's 8 kilometers, we realized that it's very long. Not all students can walk the trail. So what we did was we came up with an activity sheet. I've got samples here. If anybody wants to have a look at it later, you can come and get it from me. So this was something again that was done in collaboration with the schools, with the primary school teachers. So we only choose about 5 sites from that many number of sites that we have, because like I said, I don't think the kids can walk the entire 8 kilometers, right? So we only choose a few sites from the trail, and then we try to link it to their curriculum. So for this particular case, it was the character and citizenship education. It's a new module as well. In the past, they call it civics and moral education. So they learn things like values, like respect for the elders, and then like appreciation for our pioneers and all that. So those were some of the things that we tried to instill in the students. So when this was given to teachers to distribute to all primary school students, so about more than 100 over 1,000 students, every student from primary 1 that means 7 to primary 6, 12 years old, everybody gets a copy of this. The teachers explain to them that they should actually encourage their parents and their families to walk the trail over the weekend. So there are activities at the site. So for example, at one of the site, they can take a family selfie, or they can actually solve like a quiz or something at each site. 5 sites only, and then after they finish the site, they fill up the things in the activity sheet, right? There, they fill everything up. They go to a museum, we give them something. It need not be something big, it's just like maybe a small token, like a folder or a pencil or a stationery set. But, the kids, they like it. So it encourages bonding. At the same time, it encourages, appreciation and awareness of heritage as they walk through some of these sites. Of course, some of these sites actually also features the museum. So they would have to go to the museum. They would have to go to a certain gallery, for example, to take a photo or to do some embossing or stamping, maybe at the Peranakan Museum to find out a mold or a design or something. And then at the end of it, they go down and then, they get a stamp and then they get a prize. And then we also get them to hashtag in Instagram and to post their photos on social media, Facebook, Instagram and all that. So then a lot more people would be interested in this. So this is ongoing because it's for primary 1 to primary 6. So as and when they come and then they show us that they have completed, we give them something. Because we know that at least they have gone to the museum, they have seen some artifacts and, learned something. So from the primary school, I will move on to the tertiary, right? So like I said just now, so we look at as young as 5 all the way up to tertiary. So tertiary in Singapore, we refer to the polytechnics, the universities, and the ITEs. Again, this is something that is done through curriculum. In Singapore, and I think in like most parts of Asia, there isn't really a museum management course or module or something really, really targeted at heritage. It's the same problem that we have in Singapore. Normally, it's just a short workshop. It's just a very short course and module. So what we did is we partner with the universities and with the polytechnics to offer a short module, an elective module on museum management, on trails, on exhibition, on heritage. So the National Museum, for example, is located just opposite the Singapore Management University. So the Singapore Management University actually has a course on Bachelor of Arts in Arts and Culture Management. So we talked to the professor. She's very interested as well. So we offered an elective module on museum management. So it's about 13 to 15 weeks. How we come in for that? So the professor actually provides the theory for the module and ask the museum professionals actually when the students come to the museums. Of course, out of that 13 weeks or 15 weeks, normally about 5 or 6 sessions are being conducted at the museum or at our conservation center. Of course, we move them to different museums, and each time they come to a museum, somebody will talk to them. So it could be a curator, or when they go to the conservation center, the conservator will talk to them, or sometimes the educator or a programmer, or even somebody from facilities and operations. So at this level, at the tertiary level, our programs are really more to develop capability, to ensure a pipeline of talent in the heritage industry. I mean, the way we treat these students, I would tell my colleagues, these are our future colleagues. We are hoping that eventually they will be interested to join the heritage industry. And again, we want them to know that there are many, many professions within the industry itself. It's not always just curator and conservator and historian. So sometimes we even get the estates person or the operations and the facilities person to come and talk to them. If nothing, even if it doesn't mean that they will eventually join the industry, at the very least, they have a better understanding of museum management and operation, and of course, a better awareness of the history and heritage and culture of Singapore. Other than coming and sharing, right, during the sessions, we are also actually involved in the assessment. So this was actually the final assessment. So my colleagues and I, we also work with the professor to come up with a real assignment as far as possible. So it depends on the needs of the museum at that particular time. So there was one year where we actually wanted to, we've got a magazine actually, so we wanted to revamp the magazine, and we wanted to know how can this particular magazine actually reach out to the young ones. So we asked them to do a pitch. So there were a few into groups, right? So they pitch to us and let us know how should we revamp this particular magazine in order to reach out to the youth. So we come in for consultation, and then of course we come in for the assessment as well. So we do co-assessment together with the professor. So what they get would be like real life feedback from an industry partner, industry professional. So another program actually is with a polytechnic, Temasek Polytechnic. Again, this is an elective module. So far, most of the things that we've done with the tertiary are really elective module because we are starting small. These are programs that we just started 1 or 2 years ago. So far, the intake and the students coming on board have been, have been very good. Have been very overwhelming. So like the university program, just now, each time we have about 40 students. Similarly, for the polytechnic one, each time we have about 40 students coming on board. For the polytechnic students, the focus is on heritage trails and exhibition. So there are 2 tracks. So 20 of them would be going on the exhibition track, another 20 would do trails. Then again, we give them real life assignments. So for example, we are going to do a trail in this particular neighborhood. So we get them to help us do research, help us do oral history interviews. Of course, these are being taught to them before they actually go out and do the field work. And then eventually they will pitch to us. So for example, for this particular estate or for this particular neighborhood, if we want to do a trail, which sites, which building should we feature in the trail? So we get their inputs, and as far as possible, I realize that students at this level, the older ones, they would want recognition, they want acknowledgement. So we try as far as possible to give them real life projects so that we can credit them somehow, we can feature them maybe on our website, on our social media, or even we can credit them in the activity booklet, or if their projects are good enough. And then they are very happy with that because they use this as a portfolio for them to eventually move on and get a job. So these are the other projects that we have with the tertiary level. So these are the few polytechnics and universities that we have worked with in Singapore to offer the modules. Then across all levels, we have got this thing called the Heritage Corners Scheme. This one applies to whether you're preschool, primary school, secondary school, or even a tertiary. If you are interested, what we do is we provide some kind of support and funding for schools to establish their own heritage corner or heritage gallery within their own school. Of course, they find a classroom or even a corner or a corridor within the school. The whole idea is for them, again, like I kept mentioning earlier, is to let them know that heritage is a part of everyday life. You don't have to go to a museum to learn about history. History is all around you. So first thing first, maybe you should start by learning the history of your school. So that is the whole idea of this Heritage Corner. So to document the history of the school, and then the history of the neighborhood where the school is situated, and then of course eventually to talk about a bit about the history of Singapore. In all the programs that we do, we try to encourage them to weave in, to link it with curriculum as well. Similarly for this, because we do not want it to be a white elephant, maybe after you've done and you've established a corner and that's it. You only open it up to the public during open house, or when you have some overseas or foreign delegates coming, then you open it. No, we don't want that. So we ask them to include this as part of the lesson. So in their application and their proposal to us, they have to let us know how big is the gallery going to be, what is it going to contain, how it's going to be used for. And ideally, if they give us the lesson plan, then they will get more funding. So this one comes under our grants funding. So we provide the school with the grants for them to establish the corner. So this was actually one of the pilot schools. So that was our then Minister of Culture, Community. So during the opening, and it so happened that it was his school. So this school did a heritage corner, and that was the minister's, alma mater. So they invited him, and then of course they get the students to bring him around the corner. This was another school as well. So normally during the launches of the Heritage Corners, they will get the students as guides. That's what we encourage as well. So we tell the teachers, we have a guidebook. We give the teacher a guidebook, how to establish a corner. And after the corner is open, what happens? You have to get the students ready as well. You must train the students so that they become confident guides. Then they are the ones who should bring people around the school corner because it's their school, right? So we want them to be proud of it as well, instill a sense of pride among the students. What we did was, in order to actually garner attention and to get more schools on board, we also organized an open house. So for the schools that have a heritage corner, last year, we organized an open house. So over that Saturday, that weekend, all the schools with heritage corners open up their corners. So we help them to publicize it. So you open your corners, you get your students ready to be guides, and then open it up to the public. And everybody can come in. Again, like I said, because we want it to be used, we want it to be utilized, and we also want the students to practice what they have learned. So feedback from the teachers were that the students find it very helpful, even in some of the schools where they do not have that many visitors. At least it instills in them a sense of confidence, like for them to practice their public speaking, because they are able to finally showcase the school, they can be proud of it. So this was during the open house last year. So we had 10 schools that came on board, and then we have about 100 students. So each school has about 10 guides. So 100 students participated, and then it reached out to about 500 over members of the public because we publicized it in the newspaper. We sent it to the community centers and all that, and so members of the public came because it could be anybody, you could be an alumni of that school, or maybe your child is interested to register or to enroll in that school. So this is an opportunity as well for the school to showcase what they have done. So this was some of the feedback given from the teachers and the students and the people who came. So they are very happy that, somebody is documenting the history of their school, especially the alumni. So it gives them the opportunity to come back, to contribute. In some cases, the alumni even actually donate an item to be displayed in the school's gallery. So it could be an old uniform or an old report card, that they can share with the younger students. So these are some of the examples of the corners that we have supported. All these are in schools, yeah? So, like I said, some could be big, some could be small. Some are just along the corridor. Some are like spanning more than one classroom. Some with a bit more money, they actually convert like 3 classrooms so it becomes a gallery, not just a corner. Yeah, so that one actually, the Mito school, that one is really big because they also have a lot of support from their foundation and association. So you see that they actually put their uniforms and all that. So all in all, we have, since we started this program about 3 years ago, we have supported about 50 heritage corners. There are over 300 schools in Singapore. There are some of them who have already developed their corners many years ago. So we welcome them also. If let's say they want to revamp their corner, they can also come to us. We can give them a bit of funding. Other than funding support, we also actually can provide them with some content or research. For example, if we have information or we have research material for that particular town or that particular neighborhood, we will share it with the school for free. So you can use this and you can incorporate some of this in the school's corners and panels and all that. So it's not just about funding. Then, of course, for some schools, actually the teachers are the one who actually put together everything from the writing to the photography and all that. Some schools with a bit more money, they would then engage somebody to help them, a vendor, an external party to actually help them to do up the corner. So in those cases, we also will share contacts with them because we work a lot with people who do exhibition, displays, panels and all that. So we do share contacts with the schools on, who are the best people to work with, who are the researchers you can work with, who can help you with copy editing, with photography and all that. Some schools, the teachers are really very passionate about it. They want to do everything themselves. It's good. It's fine as well. And in some cases, they actually get the students involved as well to interview members of the community, to take photos, or to get their parents to actually donate something, if their parents were from that school. So it's really a community effort. This is another clip that I have on the corner itself. This was during the launch of the corner, so maybe we can have a quick look at this.
2 new initiatives by the National Heritage Board, or NHB. Alice Chow with more.
As a schoolboy, Culture, Community and Youth Minister Lawrence Wong walked past the Katong Post Office countless times. Today, he retraced his footsteps in a trip down memory lane. It's part of a charity walk organized by his alma mater, Tanjong Katong Secondary School. To preserve the history of the neighborhood, a heritage corner has been set up. It aims to cultivate a sense of belonging among students and engage the community. Students will also be trained as guides to conduct tours.
I get to be more exposed to the different historical evidence of the development of TK that is very much related to the development of Singapore.
Post office is very old. The wonton mee, very famous in Keys. And then the tau kwa pao also. We make old memories, and then we all friends.
This is part of a program where the National Heritage Board works with schools to provide funding.
We do want to do more to help our young get in touch with our history and heritage, because that's an important part of strengthening our identity as Singaporeans. And that's why we are always looking for creative ways to nurture this passion and love for heritage.
Soon, tertiary students will also get more opportunities to develop their interest in heritage. NHB and the Singapore Management University will sign a memorandum of understanding to explore more areas of cooperation. NHB hopes such initiatives will help grow a pool of passionate and capable heritage professionals.
Yeah, so that was actually during the launch of the Heritage Corners, as well as they also mentioned about the tertiary module that I shared earlier with the Singapore Management University. I think this would be the last program that I'll be sharing. This one is on a heritage trail adoption scheme. So I mentioned just now that we do a lot of heritage trails as well in Singapore. So to date, we have about 15 heritage trails. So like I said, the biggest one being the one that we just launched last year, that's the Jubilee Walk. That one actually covers most of our museums and the civic district and all that. But most of our trails are actually situated within the neighborhood itself. So in the eastern part of Singapore, the western part of Singapore. So normally within this trail, there is always a school, or in fact, there are a few schools. So we work with schools as well. So after we have developed the trail, so what we do is we go knocking on the schools. Do you want to adopt our trail? Right? What do you do when you adopt a trail? So of course, we dangle a carrot, right? So if you want to adopt the trail, we will train your students. Okay, so we train your students for free. Okay, to be guides, to be student guides. So then what you have to do, once the students are trained, you open it up, you make sure that the students actually then bring other members of the school. Could be another student, could be a teacher, or could be when you have, foreign visitors coming to your school, the students will then be guiding these people along the trail. Again, like I said, we want to instill pride among the students and a sense of belonging of where the students stay. And at the same time, learn about the history of the school, the history of the community, and then eventually the history of Singapore. I mean, because Singapore is really a very small country, but we do have a history dating back many, many years ago. And we do want our young generations to learn something, if not in a big way, at least to know about the history of the place where you are staying for a start, right? So when we first started this program, we tell schools that adopt one of the few trails that we have. But we realized that in some schools, there are actually no trails. So what happens? But some schools are actually quite passionate about it. Some of the teachers, they have developed their own trail. So even if it's their own trail, so maybe in that particular area, we don't have a national heritage trail, but the school has done a small trail of about maybe 3 sites or 5 sites around the school. We tell them, yeah, it's fine, as long as you utilize the trail, we will train the students. And each time we will train about 20 students. And all we ask is for them to actually let us know, whether you have people walking this trail, whether it's really useful, whether the guided tours are really useful to the public, whether there's any feedback from the community, that's all. Recently, we have teachers coming to us. They said, hey, instead of training students, can you train us to be guides? So then we can be the one training the students. So we tweak our program. Yeah, we're fine with that. If the teachers are the ones who want to be trained, we train the teachers instead. And I realized that training the teachers are better. It's more sustainable, because once you train the students are not likely to train other students, especially when they leave the schools and all that, then the knowledge goes with them. So we have started training the teachers. So the teachers are the one who then train the students, and then they come up with lesson plans around it. Yeah. So normally during our trail launches, we always have a minister or a member of the parliament and all that to grace the occasion. So we get the students. It's nicer, for the members of the community, the ministers and all that, to hear from the students instead of from us, the adults sometimes, right? So we train the students. If you can see from all these photos, they are the ones then doing the guiding during all these launches. So that is our Deputy Prime Minister and our Defence Minister gracing some of the trail launches, and the students are the ones telling them about the history of the school, about the history of the community and the neighborhood. Yeah. So these are some feedback that we get from students about the trail adoption program. So they said it's fun, if it's nothing else, they actually learn public speaking skills, they learn it doesn't matter, even if they say that they do not learn about history at the end of the day, but they learn something. Okay, so maybe they learn about, about public speaking. They learn how to be more confident, to be able to speak to the public. It's okay, it's a step for us. At least they pick up a skill and they learn a value through some of our programs. So through all the programs, like I mentioned just now, we hope to build strong foundations among the students. Of course, the bonus is at the end of the day, they learn something about culture, they learn something about heritage, and then they appreciate it. And then eventually, of course, for the older ones, if it interests them to join the heritage sector, to contribute to the heritage sector, whether to work in the industry or to be a volunteer guide, or to even contribute something, that would of course be best for us. So that's why we are starting them young. Okay, we want to build the awareness in them from a very young age of 4 or 5 years old, so that and as they go along and then they learn in primary school and they go on to tertiary, it builds upon them. If nothing else, then at least it encourages that museum-going culture in Singapore. I think the museum-going culture in Singapore is only picking up the past few years, maybe the past 10 years. Before that, I don't think there was a lot of interest in arts and culture in Singapore because we are really into science and technology, and all that. But recently, there's really been a lot of interest. The public are getting more vocal. You have to preserve this, you have to preserve that. So we need to do a lot more of community engagement to tell them about how to appreciate, what's around you, and of course to be able to work with us, not just tell the government that you should do this and do that. Let us know, how we can work together to make the place better for everyone. That's all I have. So thank you very much. Yeah.